All right. Ready? Welcome, church family and friends, to another podcast here at First Baptist Church. Well, we're going to be Windsor Christian Church, but we'll keep working on that. But we have Tim Swanson with us today, and Tim is pastor of Redemption Hill down in Santa Rosa. And Tim's been a friend of mine for, 15 years. Yeah. And, it's kind of love at first sight, I would say. I came up here to help pastor up here at First Baptist, and Tim was already on staff, and it was good. We just similar philosophy of ministry and really similar life situations. Mm-hmm. We both have, at the time, 3 kids. We added another one, but our kids are all similar age, and wives get along, and it's good. Yeah. So today's podcast, I told Tim we're probably going to get in trouble on this one because I want to talk about just the struggles that pastors have had working through the last 2 years of this pandemic, and just so you could hear kind of the different struggles we've had to work through, and so hopefully that's helpful for you, and just know how to pray for us and encourage us, because we're in this just as much as anyone. And so we'll get into that, hear Tim's story, and if we have time, we'll do a little more, but that's kind of where we want to go with it. So, So typically Tim and I are missionary. We'll have these conversations at a coffee shop that I just think the church should, the broader church should know about these conversations too. And so if you can take the time to listen to this, hopefully it'll be encouraging for you. So Tim, welcome. Thanks for coming, and tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey into Christianity and being a pastor.
Yeah. So I grew up in a Christian home, and actually was a pastor's kid, and actually a pastor's grandkid. And so the last thing that I ever wanted to be was a pastor. I had seen the challenges of ministry and decided that was not something that I wanted to be a part of. But my grandfather pastored for about 50 years, and my dad was a pastor for about 18 years before he had a moral failing, and then my parents divorced. And so I went through a time in my own life where I think I was more of an agnostic, believed that God was real, but struggled with an active and present and loving and caring God who was still at work. And then towards the end of my high school years, an individual in the church that I went to, my mom required me to go to church on a weekly basis. If I was going to play sports or other things, I had to be at church every week, at least for the worship service. And the Word of God was still working on my own heart during that season of time. And an individual came to me and just basically said these simple words of, you claim to be a Christian, but there's nothing in your life that reflects that. And it spoke to me. It confronted me, I think, in my sin. And then
how old were you?
I was late 16, early 17, somewhere in that range. Yeah. And this man took it upon himself to begin discipling me. And the very first verse that he asked that we would memorize, and being really truthful, I wanted no part of it. I was very self-righteous and really thought, I'm kind of doing this guy a favor. He wants somebody to disciple. I'll be this guy, and I'll kind of appease him. And that was just kind of the arrogance of my own heart. So at that point, began meeting with him, and Luke 9:23 was the verse that really was vital in shaping me, helped me understand what it really meant to submit to the lordship of Christ, of taking up your cross daily and denying self and following him. And so that was kind of the start of my own, kind of what I would say, I used to share with people that I accepted Christ in my life when I was 7 years old, but I wasn't saved until I was 17 or 18, when I really understood what it meant to lay down my life for Christ. And those were the transforming pieces there. So that's how I came to Christ. And then shortly after that, was blessed in that I had planned on going away to school and stayed local. I grew up in Castro Valley, and so in the East Bay, and went to college at Cal State Hayward, which is now Cal State East Bay. And during that time was asked to serve in a ministry there, and doing junior high ministry, and came on as an intern. And as a part of interning in that ministry, then became an interim youth ministry director there at the church, and then went on staff there after I'd finished college. And so began that kind of move towards ministry there in college. So my desire was actually not to be in ministry. When I left high school, I really thought there were two areas. I loved science, started college as a science guy, and was looking to either be a pilot in the military or to be a doctor, one of the two. Mm-hmm. And was, because of some other physical limitations, had some questions as to whether or not I'd pass a physical for the military, and did my freshman year in college. And during that time was beginning to feel a strong call to ministry, a strong pull in that direction. And again, my own personal desire was to not be in ministry. And I fought that call with everything that I had. And anything that looked like a glimmer of hope outside of being in ministry was what I wanted to pursue. Mm-hmm. And so pursued this opportunity with the military. The hope was to be a pilot, and got into, was applying for an officer's program that allowed for guaranteed flight slots. And my prayer began to be, Lord, although I don't want to do ministry, if this is really what you want, then I'm going to ask you to take away the opportunity, mm-hmm. so that I know that this is true and clear. And in the spring of 1993, while working on a car, we had a wire wheel sander that imploded, and I had a piece of steel that shot directly through my left eye. And in that season, there was a part of my own personal life where I was told after coming in that there was a high likelihood that I would lose my left eye. And in God's grace and His mercy, after a series of things, I regained the sight completely in that eye. But it changed enough that I could no longer pass the flight physical with the injured eye. So at the moment, I was still very frustrated with the Lord. And it was actually the same man that had been discipling me that simply asked the question, "What have you been praying?" And I would say those were transformative moments for me, where in that moment, it was as if the Lord just made it as clear as day, mm-hmm. that I've taken away the desire of your heart, and I'm going to give you the desire that I have for you. And I wouldn't change that for anything. Mm-hmm. I love ministry. I'm blessed to be a part of it. It definitely has its challenges, but mm-hmm. I've seen God in it and mm-hmm. through it, and wouldn't really want to be doing anything else. Yeah,
yeah. I think it's cool you're able to articulate how God's walked you into this position, mm-hmm. and I think any person, any Christian in any position, whether it's car salesman or pastor, mm-hmm. God's brought you to that place. And I think Christians should be able to articulate that calling, even if it's not into being a pastor.
Right.
I think it's really, because we're all where we're at by God's leading and design, right? Yeah. So I think it's cool how but as pastors, right, we're kind of forced to
to think through those things in a different way.
Put words to it. So it's really good. It's really good. So hopefully people could just see that example.
Yeah.
So First Baptist Church, you were here serving in youth ministry, boats driving up on islands and trashing and all kinds of fun youth ministry stories. And then I come, and then a year later, you're like, "Hey, Lance, I think I'm going to go be a lead pastor at this church in Santa Rosa." Like, "Oh, thanks, Tim. All right. Am I that bad? You want to just leave?" So anyway, so talk about that.
Yeah.
Kind of God taking you from, we call it one frying pan to
another frying pan. Yeah. So, and it had nothing to do with Lance. So that's the good thing. In fact, at the time that we transitioned from First Baptist down to, at the time, was Foothills, which is now Redemption Hill Church, we were not looking to leave. That was actually probably one of the greatest things for us, as we were very content where we were at. Mm-hmm. And we'd gone through a season here. The church was in transition in 2005, and my role had already begun changing away from kind of youth ministry into more associate ministry and working with families, and during that time of transition, then more stepping into kind of an interim role. And the challenges here of walking through the challenges during that transition really did prepare me for what I was going to be walking into. It was faithful advice from two things, from one of our missionaries who Art Aragon, who some of those here at the church know Art, and Art's words to me in one moment was just a simple word of, be faithful to what the Lord has for you. God will be your vindicator. And what he meant during that season of transition was the difficulty of that transition, that it was hard to walk through that without feeling like everything was being questioned. Everything, your motivations, the challenges of and difficulties that come along with some of these difficult things that happen in church. But
you can see from the church side why they would question, because of the mistrust in leadership maybe at the time. So it's like, we'll answer the questions. You know, but it's just when you're just getting question after question.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. And so, and the church should question those things, frankly. You don't want to be at a place where everything is just yes. Now, as pastorally, there are times that we may, I think, can even kind of sit back on some questions, because questions at times don't always feel like questions. They can feel like accusations. But I think a lot of that often deals a lot of times with our own hurts. And so I think one of those things is to remember too, in those situations, that I think this is for congregations because we don't spend much time talking about it, but as pastors, we hurt too. And we're struggling to trust again as well. And so we walk through those things in the same way. And so I think when we went to, it's
good to hurt. Like, it shows we still have feelings.
Absolutely. If we stop hurting, that's the problem. We stop caring. Absolutely.
It's good. It's okay.
So it's good. And so when we went to Foothills, and they know this, I was quite content here and being here. I think one of the things that was actually encouraging transitionally, and this would be for anybody that was, I think, that pastoring or part of a leadership in a church, or even just good for the body to know, and that was coming out of a season of hurt in ministry. When you came, you shared that my first vision this first year is just for you guys as a staff to have joy back in ministry. And that was truly transformative for us. And there was an intentional effort to do that. And you guys, some of you guys that know us, Lance and I can speak very directly to one another. And we can feel very passionate about things with one another. And that actually allowed for a tremendous amount of healing to work through that, because we could say things to one another that I think at times somebody else might look at us cross-eyed and say, "Why in the world are you guys speaking like that to each other?" And yet at the same time know that we love one another and that we care for one another, care for one another's families. And that was a huge blessing. And it was something that helped me in that year to
It was a weird
heal
dynamic, because I'm the younger guy, but I'm the lead guy now. And so, and then you guys were like, "Hey, we'll quit. We'll put in our
resignation."
I'm like, no, you guys stuck through it. I need you. We need you. Like, yes. And so, I think we had to work through some of that. But I saw you guys just worn out. Worn out. I'm like, and I've always been in healthy churches. I'd never seen something like that. And I'm like, all right, let's get you guys, kind of a sports analogy. Let's get you some rest. Let's get you back healthy, and so that it's cool.
No, it was great, and I think that was a huge thing. So even as Lance jokes, the reason for leaving was not Lance, and so our family was wonderful. And
hey, listen, I would leave Lance if I could. Right?
Exactly. The nice thing about it, to be really frank, was that I think where God just showed me some things in it, and one of them was even Art's words coming to true, of just where there was a faithfulness in it, that as the faithful to those things, the Lord redeemed those things. And so going to Foothills, it really was jumping from what was now no longer a frying pan, but that we had simmered in that pan, and God had taught us some things to now jumping back into a frying pan.
Crispy skin.
Yes.
To go to the next spot.
Yeah. So where we thought we were going and experiencing was not necessarily what we experienced. And so we arrived there, and within 6 months of being there, a very long-term affair between the pastor and another staff person was revealed. And during that season, there was, at least on one of the individuals' part, a lack of repentance. And so very early in my time there, I had to walk through a church discipline process with the former pastor. And it was actually being here and seeing God work through that transition that gave me really a confidence to walk through that there and stick to it, as hard as it was, and exhausting and wearying. I think sometimes people can think as pastors that we look at these things and get kind of mechanical with them. But the truth is we grieve over these things. And it's something that we don't share a lot of time about, that these are things that they consume our thoughts. We're praying for people. We're praying that healing would come. And I think we take those call to be both a shepherd, but one who is caring and one who is protecting the flock seriously. And so, so it.
I think what people don't get is like, we're just obeying Jesus. Like Jesus says, this is how you deal with this in the church when this happens. And even though it might seem harsh or straightforward, whatever,
right,
unloving, it might seem that way. It's not. And because our culture has been so jaded by the word love and what that looks like and means, that. And what people don't realize, we're just under shepherds. We're just doing what Jesus says to do.
Right.
And I think real, true Christians get that. They go, hey, this is what the Bible says. These guys are just trying to obey Jesus. Like, they're doing their job, like we're just under shepherds,
Right. Yeah.
And when the going gets tough, we stay because that's what Jesus says. Like, the hirelings will just leave when things get difficult.
Right. Right.
Not us.
Right. Right.
Like, no. We're gonna keep shepherding and doing what God's called us to do,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think with that, in sticking it through and following it through, there's a comfort and a security with that comes knowing that I've just got to let the Lord work through this, because I know that if I get in the way of that, Lord can't work. And ultimately what we're looking for is the redemption of that person who's walking in that sin.
He'll work in removing you.
Yeah, he will.
He'll keep working.
He will. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the great things that we have as we kind of walk through that and being committed to the word, is that we can kind of release that. And I think the other piece in that is that discipline in anyone's life hurts. None of us like to experience that. And yet we have a God who tells us that he lovingly disciplines us as a loving father. And so I think it's easy.
For our good.
For our good, yeah. And it's easy to lose sight of that, I think, at times. So, yeah.
So you went to Foothill, and then you guys merged with Calvary.
Yeah.
With Ben and their church there. And
So we went through a season at Foothills where we saw God do, I think, just a great work. The church actually came to a place of health. We were a smaller church.
Just had to clean some stuff up, right?
Yep.
I mean, think of like an infection, like let's clean this up and get healthy.
That's exactly it,
yeah, it might be a little smaller, but it's way more healthy.
Way more healthy. And I think that just like antibiotics may have to run for a while, it's the same thing. I mean, preaching God's word faithfully, shepherding the people that are there, loving them, that it's just the faithfulness. It is amazing how being faithful, part of I think we have a lot of churches that you can look around at, and you can look at churches trying to kind of find the secret sauce. And the reality is that there, in my belief, there is no secret sauce. I mean, the secret sauce is the Word of God, and so it's not a secret. It's He's poured it out. He's said, "This is how you lead a church."
Yeah,
And so I think we spend a lot of times trying to manufacture things that the Lord just looks at us and says, "Man, you guys are busybodies. You're not really doing this the way that I've called you to do it."
Or you're following corporate America. You're following what every business owner does, and that's find the new thing and try to be popular and cool. And
Right. Yeah.
Sorry.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I think for us, one of the things that was helpful was during that time, we had the support. We had a strong support network. So we went through a season of time.
Through your church.
Through the church. Yeah, so through the church, so I think there was a strong support network for Foothills at that time that consisted of First Baptist, that consisted of
people might not
churches.
understand, especially if they're new to the faith, like each church is part of a larger association.
Right.
Typically, there's no church that's completely independent.
Right.
People try to say that I think it's, again, another buzzword.
Right.
We're independent, but most churches, you should be a part of, affiliated with a larger body for accountability and support. And
right.
so you're part of a conservative Baptist, and
cool.
then that's got its own set of churches that are part of that and that's what came alongside you guys and helped you navigate the situation.
Yeah. So in situation, we had the help really of what it's now called Venture Church Network, which was formerly the Conservative Baptist Association, and then we had the help of we were just beginning to develop what is now the Gospel Coalition, which and then we also had the help of just even the pastors network in the county, where we had help of that network of at the time it was called Together in Christ, that were partnering in with us. We went through times during that season of time. We went through a period where we were on the verge of, from a budgetary perspective, of we had not received pay for a month, and we were asking people come. We weren't turning lights on during the worship service. We would turn on sound, and that was it for the worship service. We didn't turn on heaters or anything. We asked people to bundle up and just come in coach jackets and blankets in the middle of winter. And the Lord just worked through that. And one of those ways that he worked through that was actually we were sitting following after not being paid for a month. We actually decided we were sitting together as a leadership team after church to decide what we do at this point. So we've been blessed in that our facility is paid off. So we had property, but we didn't have much at that time by way of cash. And following this transition, we had, I believe, it was 8 to 10 of our men in the church all lost work within a 6-week period of time, which was substantial for us. And so, through just a really neat thing, Lance and I were at a party together, and Lance just asked if we gotten paid, and we shared no, we hadn't. And then the following week, we were literally sitting in a meeting after church that Lance knew nothing about. Actually, we'd not shared it with anybody outside. And Lance called, and in the middle of that, and I remember telling Lisa, my wife, I'm like, hey, I'm in a meeting. I'll give him a ring back. And she's like, he sounds like it's really important. You probably ought to take this call right now. And so as we answered the call, Lance said, hey, just want to let you know we took a communion offering for you guys today, and I don't even know what your need was, but just want to let you know that like $9,800 came in the communion offering. And I can't remember the exact amounts. What I remember is that I remember sharing with you that it was $11 more than what we needed. And only the Lord can do that. And so from that day forward, the church seemed to continue to climb. That's the way I'd put it. It was a turning point for us. It was just a phenomenal thing that happened. And then, we merged. We'd been partnering with Calvary Community.
Just real quick before, so you understand the backstory of why I took that offering. I was just like, okay, Tim's struggling, their church is struggling. I read the Bible, in 2 Corinthians, I believe it is, where Paul took up offerings for other churches, and other churches gave to support other churches. And I'm like, well, this is a really simple thing to do. They're struggling. Let's take an offering to help another church. Like, it wasn't like a leap of faith, just to me, it was just like, this is what, and so I just told our elders, like, hey, I think this is what they do in the scriptures. Let's do this. And they're like, okay, we've never done that before, but okay, and I'm like, so we just took an offering, and that came in, and it's what you guys needed, so it's like, okay, super cool, super cool.
It was awesome. It's like a cry fest on the phone. So that's that's what we try to do.
I told Tim what the amount was, and I think it was just dead silent for like 10 seconds.
So,
Tim, are you there? No, I'm here. You have no idea, Lance. You have no idea. I'm like, okay.
It was cool. It was a great thing. So I think that's been a huge thing. And then I think I can see markers all along the way in the life and history of that church. The church is an established church. It was established in 1954. And then, but it had a history that was one of struggle. They ironically continued to proclaim the gospel, but the church itself, in that proclamation, there was also some areas that were in need of great repair and correction as well.
It's amazing that a pastor can be in an affair with somebody in the church, and works at the church. Well, let's just call it adultery. Let's use the biblical word. And yet still get up week after week and preach the gospel. Yeah. That scares me.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
The kind of hardening that it takes to do that is what is, and it really does become, it is the reason that I think 1 Timothy 5, says warn an elder once, but not, again, you got to have 2 or 3 witnesses. If you entertain that action, warn him. And if he doesn't listen, bring it to the church. Yeah. And I think it is because one is for the protection of the church. Because the truth is we're in sin. There are things that we don't touch on. But the other part is it is a protection for his own soul. You cannot continue to proclaim the gospel regularly and the need for God's grace every week and remain unrepentant in sin without your heart becoming seared and without it hardening you. And that's why it's not. Restoration from an affair for a pastor is never a matter of weeks or even a year. We're talking the qualification, and there's probably some disagreement about if that ever could occur. But if it ever did occur, we're talking years of restoration, not a brief period of time.
Yeah. Well, and I think that model too of the one pastor, senior pastor, like no accountability. Like that all leads into that. And that's why a plurality of elders is so key. Yeah. And the church knowing what the qualifications are of a pastor, that's for the safeguard of the church. Yeah. And so, Yeah. No, there was a lot of, knowing what we know about the scriptures, there was a lot of things they weren't doing that allowed that to take place.
Right. Absolutely. And I would say that what ends up happening, and it goes for both the leadership of the church, not when questions are rising up, not going down those avenue and being free to ask questions. I think the leadership asking those questions and saying this doesn't seem right, doesn't feel right, the boundaries aren't right here, all of which were things that were in play during that time. They begin to kind of ignore the discernment that the Lord's giving them in order to continue moving forward. The other part of that is that the body then does kind of a similar thing. Two things. They defer their discernment to the leadership. So rather than asking the question, they just assume that it's not that it's not a problem because they're not hearing it's a problem. And then the other thing that happens is they get up and they walk with their feet. They walk out. And both of those responses aren't the right responses. I mean, I think part of that is that you're there as a body member. You have the responsibility to ask us as pastors, as elders, questions. If you see something that doesn't seem right or biblical, you need to ask us that. And if there's sin involved in our life, that's an important piece. That if you're seeing something where you need to ask us the question, then do that. And I think that's an important piece because sin seems to permeate itself in silence. And that's what we see is that when people are no longer able to answer their own questions, that's when sin, I think, seems to be hidden the most. Yeah. So when other people are defending, but the person themselves is remaining silent, we need to each be the ones that give account for our own sin. So,
yeah, I even had a meeting last week with a lady from church who had a decision I made 2 or 3 years ago. I didn't feel like it was really resolved. And so, she's kept coming to church, praise the Lord, but I followed up with her because I'm like, I just don't feel like that ever got resolved. Let's get that nailed down, Right. And so we had a good meeting, and it's good. She's asking questions and one,
Right. Great. Yeah.
It's good.
We want that. Yeah. And need it. We just there's obviously times probably we don't want it, but we need it. So, and I'd say that might just be one of the little thing is give us the time to process what you're asking us as well. Yeah. So in the same way, there's things that you've been thinking of that are on your own heart. And I think it's one of the things that helps us as pastors is I will say that we're going to make mistakes. We're going to walk out church discipline, and it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be, we're going to come along, and there's going to be things that we do that that we look back on and go, yeah, I would do that differently. But I would encourage in the process of that, of coming with a heart of grace towards that, looking at our hearts in this, and trying to evaluate what's happening based upon our heart. And I think we'll admit to you, if we've screwed up, but it makes it a whole lot easier to admit that if we're coming in a partnership as opposed to coming in an accusation.
Yeah, I think people don't realize that a lot of these situations we're dealing with are totally new to us.
Yeah.
Like when you went from here to there to redemption or Foothill at the time, it's not like you've dealt with a wayward pastor before or
not
somebody
like
caught in
that.
Adultery. And
right.
So almost all the things we're dealing with are like new.
Right.
And so we're just walking through it by faith, trying to do the best we can with a group of elders and getting counsel.
Right.
But it's hard.
It is hard. It's hard. And it's I was sharing this in my message last week as we were talking about work, that it is easy to armchair quarterback stuff. It is easy to step back and say, I would just do something different. And the thing about church ministry, it's more challenging than that, is that when you're not in ministry, and this is not to say that ministry is different than other kinds of work or different things, but sometimes I don't think we think about these things in this way, and that is that most people go to work and their family is disconnected from their work. So they go to work, the challenges or questions of who they are or even the questioning of their decision is left at work. So their wives, their children, or their husbands may never hear what people are actually questioning. In ministry, it's a totally different deal. People hear. Your children hear people's disapproval. Your wife hears disapproval. And so it is a different. It's different, and our friendships are here, and they're intertwined with that as well. Church, and so, whereas most friendships are often separated from their work as well. So it is a different thing that I think one of the things is I have a real heart for pastors and their families, and that's just because having been a pastor's kid and a pastor's grandkid, there are different challenges that come with that are pressures. Yeah.
Yeah, when you say armchair quarterback, I played quarterback in high school, and when I watch a football game, I can see the whole field,
right?
And I can see where that receiver is open and where the quarterback should have made this decision and that decision, and why didn't he do that? But when you're actually playing quarterback, you're behind a line of 5 guys in a professional case, 5 300-pound men, and there are 6 300-pound men running at them. And so you're expected to see what's coming at you, but also figure out where the defenses are. And so, we're kind of in the pocket trying to figure this stuff out.
Right.
But there's all kinds of stuff happening.
Right.
We don't see this perspective. We try to as best we can, but we're in the thick of it. You know what I mean? So I think that armchair quarterback's a really good description.
Yeah. Yeah. So
because I love watching football games. Guys are like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? I'm like, dude, do you know what that quarterback's actually looking at? He's got guys that are 6'7" in front of him.
Right.
Like, it's not as simple as you think.
And he's got the pressure of guys barreling down on him.
Yeah.
It's not like he's sitting back just sipping a Coke and
it's not like your grandma running after you. It's a 6'5" guy that runs a 240 or just crazy.
He's seeing all those pieces. Yeah. So it's good. And
we have people like that in church. No, just kidding. You're that guy. No, it's all good.
No, that's good stuff.
We know when to run. We know when to duck.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that's part of the those are the parts of ministry that are part of the long suffering pieces too, and that are hard because I think sometimes as pastors people can think that we're somewhat emotionless, and I probably am in real life anyway, and that's just you ask Elisa and she'll tell you that for much of my life I was the fun sucker, so I know that about myself. The flip side of that though is well,
I have a bet with your wife on this podcast whether I can make you cry or not, and we've already got there.
You got there, man. So yeah, I know it doesn't happen often.
Give me the $20, Elisa.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't happen much, but yeah. So
okay, let's get into let's see. We're doing good. Let's get into just some of the struggles we've had to deal with the last couple of years. For me, just really quick, it was when this thing all started back in March of 2020. There was so much unknown and so many things we didn't know about this pandemic and this virus, but we had been told this could be really serious, and so we all tried to make precautions. And I remember, I don't know if you were on that call with like 20 local pastors. We had like a group phone call to talk about, hey, what are we going to do? And some said, well, we should stay open. Some said we should close. And, I remember there's going to be some differing opinions on how we deal with this right away. My thing was I had some older ladies in the church, like, I want to come do children's church still. I'm coming. Right. And I'm like, I don't know if you should be there. Like, I don't know if this is safe or not for you. Yeah. So when the government actually said we're just closing everything down, I was like, okay, cool, because we need to, I think that's right now. It helped me make that decision for me. But then after things got more known and after we flattened the curve and, some of those dynamics more was known, then it became, how do we go forward? And I think that's when a lot of opinions, a lot of ideas of how to handle this came out. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think for us, it was kind of the same thing, being on the call, kind of looking through what do we need to do. And I think in the early days, it was very easy there's not much known about this. Mm-hmm. And, we need to give them time to figure out what is going on. It seems to be quite severe. We were hearing the stories coming out of China and coming out of Europe, and I remember just that week before we went into the lockdown, the questions of like, who's gonna, like, are you guys adjusting? And I remember like the day before lockdown, I'm like, no, we're not adjusting. We're gonna keep going. And then the lockdown came, and that actually, to be honest, was actually one of those things where, obviously from a ministry perspective, it doubled this kind of workload of having to figure out how to do online services and how do you actually do this in a way. But the other side of that was, to me, it was relatively straightforward. 4 weeks which moved into 8 weeks of kind of trying to flatten the curve, so to speak, was pretty straightforward and made sense to me in the sense of trying to figure out what's happening, them getting a handle on, what's happening with that. And so we were kind of in that same boat of trying to figure out, we're not going to do this, and then actually we need to do this. And so we walked in that. And I think for me personally, as much as it was uncomfortable, there was kind of a nice reprieve in it away from just the busyness of everything, of life, culture, life. And I know for us, it also helped us to interact with our neighbors and do some things differently that, truthfully, I don't know that we would have done on our own.
Yep.
So,
yeah, and that was really, it was nice because life gets so busy. And that was, I think, a general thing most people I've talked to have said is actually it was hard to shut everything down, but at the same time, it was nice to just shut everything down.
Correct.
And then, we were doing the online, and that was taxing on a lot of our volunteers and, and people. I think people expect the church to be like Hollywood production or something where, Hollywood spends millions and millions of dollars producing this stuff.
Yes.
And we have volunteers, So I think, what I thought was cool too is churches were working together, churches were sharing resources, churches were sharing experience, and, we're trying to help everyone out. And at the end of the day, what's really important is the word of God going forth. And that was happening, I felt like. And I don't know about your guys' church, but I felt like people were just super. I just was like, people were really flexible and patient through that whole process and stayed faithful, and and weren't jumping from church to church because this church is doing it better. This is my church family, and this is how we're navigating this. And I don't know. I was actually really encouraged by the church.
Yeah, I was too.
Through the process.
Yeah.
Because again, never done it before.
Right.
Here we go.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Half of it's off an iPhone. I mean, that kind of stuff where you're even learning to use other technologies.
Yeah, and some different platforms to connect with people. And it was good. Like it was challenging for me, and I think it was helpful. Like we were going to do the podcast anyway, but it upped our social media presence,
Yeah.
Church.
I think one of the things for us where it really gained was in the use for missionaries. So we were able to use, our missionaries jumped into, a number of our missionaries, not all of them, but many of them jumped into our discipleship groups. And our discipleship groups that were doing Zoom, we had missionaries that were actually leading in place of when our leaders were gone, provided some additional strength and depth to our groups. And then our people were super, it's probably the very best way for people to engage with missionaries in the sense of they were, we get a chance to see them, when they're on furlough. And then we see their letters and different things like that. But this was them actually physically being able to engage with them via Zoom and take part with study with them and hear their teaching, hear their insights and their wisdom. And it is super helpful to even hear how God's moving, in Cote d'Ivory, or Kenya or wherever, because it's just it's awesome to see. It is awesome to also to see just the differences in the way countries were dealing with it, and being able to see that in some countries, that was being treated in a manner like this. In other countries, because of the poverty, COVID was actually a minor concern to them compared to some of the other diseases that they were working to battle. So
right, we were able to. People were jumping into our Bible studies from East Coast. One guy was from Europe. I can't remember.
Austria, I think.
Austria, and just having a hard time even finding a local church that preached the Bible.
Yeah.
Found us through, I think, gaming with another guy at church across the world, like, Christian. And so, it was really fascinating, some of the things that the Lord put together through that season. I remember that one of the struggles for me was I kind of felt like this pressure as a pastor to be like the sheriff, to be a politician, to be an epidemiologist, to be a doctor, and to be a pastor. I'm a pastor.
Yep.
It was really refreshing when I could just kind of come to a place where, like, I'm a pastor.
Yeah.
I need to continue to preach God's word, shepherd God's people. I'm not these four other things.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want answers from these four other entities, go to those entities,
Yep.
So I just felt like there was, and maybe we put that on ourselves. Maybe people didn't even put that on us. Maybe it was just like we felt like we had to be all that, and we're not, Right. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's definitely the pressure to do that, I think, on our own. I also think that the other side of that coin is I do think that there's so many differing opinions. I do think things would be different if it hadn't been an election year. I think there would have been greater unity, because I don't know, I can't remember the last time, and it didn't happen with the AIDS pandemic the AIDS issue in the early 80s. People weren't saying this is a presidential issue. It's not a politician's fault. And I think that's what's divided the culture so much, is you either, we use strong inflammatory language that diminishes people, and we're being polarized on these kind of extremes. But you look at words like, yes, if you don't wear your mask, you're unloving. If you do use your mask, you're stupid. If you start going through these language of, it's not just people can say that they, hey, I want you to do what you want to do, but there's this constant narrative going behind what people are doing.
And isn't it? I don't know. I'll just be honest. It was discouraging to see how people used their social media.
Yes.
From our church sometimes. Like, whoa.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and at the end of the day, do you want to be known for your position on COVID, or do you want to be known for the gospel?
Yeah.
And you can you can have an opinion and be direct about it, but you can be loving.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, I think what ends up happening is...
We're to represent Christ first and foremost before you're representing a political party or anything else. I mean, that was disheartening.
Yeah,
So,
and I shared with our congregation that, and ours did well. I would say that compared to others that I've heard, and even churches that have split, I'm grateful for redemption and grateful for how they carried themselves. That with that, even with that being said, the polarizing components of things on both sides, where our body has, I would say on the whole, lands across all spectrums, and what I've seen in the COVID stuff.
Well, that's the interesting thing about pastoring in Sonoma County.
Yes,
is that we have people from a lot of different political groups, and we're such a mismatch here,
Yes.
And for better or worse,
right?
Richer or poorer, it's like we're in this thing, right? And so, whereas I think churches in the South or other areas that are a little more politically aligned, we aren't that way, and so it brings a new dynamic. They have their own challenges too,
right? Correct.
I think it's I don't know if the right word's going to come to me, but I think we would be gullible to think our problems are worse than their problems.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like everybody's got their issues. But our issue is, how do we help these people with, some of these different political views and backgrounds get along in the church, and
Yeah. Well, and it kind of puts the rubber meets where the rubber meets the road, where you've got, is our unity in Christ or is it in something different?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the big pieces, because one of the things that I've seen is, I'm like, it's going to be, if you count the years that I interned, this is the beginning of year 30 for ministry for me. Mm-hmm. And it's the most... That's old. That is old, man. I'm an old man.
Jeez,
and
start pastoring at 6. Or what?
That's right. And so I just have seen, this has been the most divisive issue in the church that I've seen. And it has nothing to do with the gospel.
Right.
And it's for me, I look at these issues and I'm like, yep, the enemy's a liar and a thief, and he's at work.
Yeah.
And if we allow these kinds of things to divide or split, we're not dealing with one another in love. And we can have strong opinions, but do we deal with one another in love? And do we deal with one another in humility?
Yeah.
If those things aren't happening, then our witness, I think, is compromised. Our unity is compromised. So, yeah.
Yeah. We ended up just getting a lawyer yesterday.
Yeah.
And had a really good meeting with a lawyer down in Southern California, and she's an expert in constitutional law and religious law. And I kind of wish we would have had that early on, because a lot of things we were struggling with, we didn't know. We didn't know some of the liability issues, because people are like, our rights are to this, and our rights are to this, and we should do this. And there's just so many different pools that we needed somebody that knew a whole lot more about these things than any of us do, to help us navigate. I mean, I'm glad we have that now, but looking back, that was something I could have done maybe better, and also because I really want people like in our church to be in their lane. Like, I want whoever's in missions committee to be focused on serving missionaries and what they're doing, and I want people that are in the Spanish ministry doing Spanish ministry and youth ministry focused on that. And I feel like this issue is really, it's taken us off mission.
Yeah.
And we've spent way too much time, how do we navigate this rather than staying on mission of the Great Commission of preaching the gospel and making disciples. And so looking back, that's where I feel like I could have done a better job, is helping people stay on mission and what they were called to do, and serving them so that they could do that.
Yeah.
Because it is a great opportunity for the gospel, right?
Oh, it's a huge opportunity.
When everybody's afraid of dying.
Right. Okay. This is the time to go. Yeah.
People are thinking about it, and, like the gospel saves people.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's taken us off a mission, in that I think our issue we have been far more focused on COVID than we have on how do we bridge the gospel back to these things.
Yeah.
And so how do we actually take the person, the neighbor that's scared of dying, and share with them, listen, there is an answer to this death. And if you were to die, do you know what happens to you, after this? And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I feel like as churches that we may have missed, which is, one, we've been so busy trying to deal with it and adjust to all the different changes that we've missed the opportunity to actually really bridge the gospel here with people who are ripe, or they're experiencing it. They feel like their own fear of death. And I think we have fear of two things, right? We have this aspect of a fear of, I think fear on both polar sides actually are the things that drive it. You've got fear of death and you've got fear of lost right. And so you have these two things. And then the positive, which you have, is you have this kind of, I want to protect everyone and I want to protect rights. And so if either of those two exclude the other perspective, then we begin to move to a place of imbalance, I think. And so we can have it in the sense of being able to say, yeah, we're going to stand for rights, but we also love and we care about you as a person. And I think for me, it was a different perspective coming into COVID. Because of what I'd walked through health-wise, and having gone through, I feel like those
Tim's
challenges.
He's gone through multiple heart surgeries.
Yeah.
I think that might be helpful.
Yeah. So I've gone through a few different heart surgeries, and as a result of that, or as a result of the first heart surgery, which was the need for the second heart surgery, I had a extremely rare fungal heart valve infection that was transplanted in during the surgery. And it's one of those things that
can you take your shirt off to show? No, I'm just kidding.
If
Tim did,
it's starting to move lopsided.
He's basically Frankenstein.
I am Frankenstein.
Yeah,
yes,
just so you know.
The stomach and chest are all carved up.
His belly button isn't where most people's belly buttons are.
Belly button's not there. It's over to the side. Yeah. So,
but your reconstructive surgeon only had one eye, right? Was he? No, serious.
I think
he's not going to watch this.
Yes, there was a visual issue there with one eye, and so I love him, and so I don't know if that's the reason for it. You have to laugh at yourself a little bit about it, and thanks for bringing that up. And so he'd be like, "I'm never operating on you again." I've had multiple surgeries as a result of this thing, and as going through that, I contracted this fungal infection. Basically, there's 3 cases of it a year worldwide, is what we've been told. A third of people don't make it through the infection. A third of people don't make it beyond 5 to 7 years, and I am at year 7 now.
Okay.
And so those, I know what it's like to fit into a population where 66% of the people that have what you have die. And a few years back, having somebody that really was concerned about me just simply said, "Hey, I think you ought to take it easy." It was just playing, and there was a real genuine care and concern there. But I remember sharing with that person, I said, at some point you have to make the decision to live, not live to die. And I had lived long enough trying to, I think, following this stuff to where everything was cautionary, everything was, and you don't really realize how much you lose. And I now have because of those heart surgeries, I have a pacemaker that, not like normal people have pacemakers to fix their arrhythmias. I have a pacemaker because my ventricles don't beat on their own. So the only way that I'm alive is because this little box beats the lower chambers of my heart. I think for me, as I looked at this, I really, there were things that I was very sensitive towards and things that I felt like we could do that were in our county community.
Tim and I were on a vacation
one
time, and we went to the gym, and I look over at Tim, and Tim's like, his eyes are closed. And I'm like, oh no, Tim's dying over there. I was like, get off the treadmill, I go over to Tim, like, Tim, are you, like, touch you? He's like, oh, I'm fine, I'm just taking a break. I'm like, dude. But poor Lisa, that's what she's dealing with all the time, right?
Yeah. She lives every day. In fact, yesterday. I woke up to a light in my face in the middle of the night, and she's like, "I just didn't know if you were dead," you know. So that's the little light into the Swanson household. So if you see flashlights around, that's so that she can make sure I'm alive.
The machine was working, right?
Yeah, it didn't matter, you know. That's the problem. I don't think she could hear that. So she was like, "Yeah, it's you know." So yeah. I think for us with COVID, that helped me a lot. Was just the aspect of like, there's things that are good for temporarily, but long term, you know, when you look at the church, and one of the things I started doing was looking at Haddon Spurgeon during the different fevers in England, and the church was the ones that was in the street, and the testifying to it. And I remember Spurgeon talked about the fact that as he entered the streets, that the stench of death was so profound, but the only ones that were out were the Christians ministering to these dying people. And he said, yes, there were some that got sick, and yes, some of them died, but it was because of their lack of fear about dying that they were able to minister. And I would say, probably not to correct Spurgeon on that, I think I'd probably take it one step further, which is, I think it's that they felt the gospel was more important, that their own life meant nothing if they could live out the gospel and proclaim the gospel to somebody who needed it. And so I think in the one thing, they were not fearful of their eternal death, but more than that, they were compelled, I think, by the gospel to do it because they saw these people needing the mercy of God. So, yeah.
You know, as Paul said, the love of Christ compels us to
repentance, yeah.
To preach the gospel. To do what we're called to do. Yeah. That's awesome. So to say that again, Tim, so I think that was a really interesting quote. So you came to the conclusion that
I wanted to live rather than live to die.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. And just really quick, I think as pastors, we're trying to shepherd the church, but we're also trying to shepherd our own family at the same time. And so we're dealing with that. Can you talk about your situation there with your mother-in-law and kind of the things you guys dealt with on that level?
Yeah, so COVID, when I share these things, maybe it's good to know first that, like, as a church, we started meeting inside. We did keep our masks. We followed certain guidelines the county supervisors had proposed back a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, similar to what you guys experienced here at FBC. And then during different seasons, we had masks that were used during our worship time and taken off while we were seated, just by things that similar to kind of restaurant guidelines that we followed. And I share that to say that part of it's important to kind of understand my own family situation. My mother-in-law contracted COVID in August of 2021, and as a result of contracting COVID, she was one that did not make it. She passed away in October, or excuse me, the beginning of November rather. And it's been a journey. It's been a journey for walking through this, and obviously for my wife and for our kids, and grieving that process, grieving her death. And it has been a challenge. We're moving into that phase right now. We're working alongside Elisa's dad and just some of the life challenges that come along. He has Parkinson's, and so how that affects care there. And
and she was the healthy one.
She was the healthy one of, you're right.
Would take care of
him. Yeah. And so we're moving. Yeah, exactly. And so we're moving into that realm of now having to care for, just beginning that process of looking at long term. What do we do? How do we move him up closer to us and help him and work through that? And so
guys, just to kind of step back, you guys, I remember being with you in Estes Park, Colorado, and Elisa was talking to the doctor and talking to her sister and trying to figure out what to do with her mom.
Yeah.
And nobody can go in and see her. And I mean, the whole thing was just, I felt so bad for Elisa having to do this. I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah. And I'm going to go out on a limb, and again, people may not like this. Isolation is the absolute worst thing for a person. And I heard somebody recently that was in the hospital, an acquaintance, who simply said there's something worse than solitary confinement, and it's being confined in a hospital. And I will tell you the truth of having spent 50 days in the hospital, I personally, not from COVID,
with your heart
but from my heart stuff, that I used to wonder why no one would not want to die in the hospital. You got people around you that can help you die, in terms of help you die, comfort you. They can give you drugs that take away pain, that kind of stuff. And I'm not talking about assisted suicide here. So be real. I want to be clear on that. I don't support that on any level. But I remember coming out of there going, I just need to be out of here. I want to be at home. I want to be around people that I love and that love me. And I think that kind of isolation is devastating to our souls. It's devastating to our emotional health. And then for those that are caring, trying to do the same thing, they can't make decisions. And the truth is that there are a number of things, and this is, maybe I can share that, and that is that there is medication that was experimental that was given to my mother-in-law that did not go through a full FDA cycle. That medication stopped her from producing blood, so she no longer was actually producing her own blood. She's being transfused regularly, and that medication stopped her from being able to urinate on her own. It actually shut down her bladder, which are known side effects of this drug. And we don't know the full consequences of these things. And I think on a personal, I'm not a doctor, and so I don't want to speak as a doctor on these things because I'm not. The flip side to it is unfortunately, good, bad, and different. I've been inside the medical system for a while now, very regularly over the last 7 years, consistently. And why I love the doctors and I value them, I have found that, truthfully, that they're not always just motivated by care. That they're like anybody else, where they have those that they're reporting to, and they have contracts and agreements with other places. And so I share that to say that what we found was that was true in some of this case as well. That we have to be able to have some freedom beyond just everybody saying this is what everybody ought to do. And so I might add that and say that my mother-in-law was not vaccinated. But maybe the complicating factor in this is my own mom, who that as we're standing in the hospital, had just gotten word that my mother-in-law had passed. We drove to the hospital that she was at. We got to the hospital. We were there about 45 minutes. We're standing with her body in the room, and I get a text from my own mom. And my own mom, on the other spectrum, side of the spectrum, has the vaccine, and she's now heading to the ER because she has visible blood clots at the back of her eye. And so they're actually bulging through the eye and arrived. And so this isn't to say yes, do it, not to do it, anything like that. It's just to say that it's not as clean cut and dry as I think that maybe our media makes it, as people want to make this. There are existing conditions that change these kinds of things. Having been through it from a heart perspective, knowing full well, I'm a guy who, when I got COVID, I got the monoclonal treatments. I was not vaccinated for reasons that won't go into. It has nothing to do with being anti-vax. It has nothing to do with being against a vaccine. But I've been through enough medically and was not really ready to interject something new into that process. And that was done with counsel of others and medical opinion. And so I think that it's more messy.
You were talking to your heart doctor about what to do with this too, right?
Yeah, I mean, we had some good insight there from him, and I think although the doctors themselves are probably pro-vaccine, I think that in my particular case, working through those different dynamics was important. Also, more and more hearing from doctors that I have knowledge of, and in fact, there was a point at which I had come to a place where I thought, well, maybe the best thing to do is getting it. I'd already had COVID, but I didn't want to get it again, and it hit me hard. I mean, I think I was down 21 days with this thing, and yeah, it was very different. But just in talking with some doctors, other doctors, that just some of their experiences. One just warned me repeatedly, you need to understand that there are significant side effects, that I am witnessing significant side effects. Another doctor shared with me that that while he believed strongly in the vaccine, he had great concerns about it because he was no longer able to speak freely about his own opinions about the vaccine or questions that he had around why certain medications were not being allowed and used. So as I talked more and more, it just, as doctors expressed more concern about it, for me it was something where I think these are the kinds of things that, again, I'm not pro-vaccine, I'm not anti-vaccine. I'll be honest in saying that I think if it had more time underneath it, I probably would get it if I saw that the side effects were not dangerous. But I think for people, when they say things like myocarditis are not severe things or they go away, it's a virus in the heart. And I that's no small thing. And I can just share with, from my own personal experience that myocarditis, pericarditis, it's usually, well, I don't even want to speak to that. In general, it's not as benign as we're hearing. It's not something that is as they kind of treat it as, well, it's swelling in your heart, it's not that destructive. Talk to people who have it, and you'll hear something very different. And so that's, I think, why we live in a culture where people have to make choices, and we need to make pragmatic choices too, and informed decisions, and not judge one another based upon these things, but rather each person has the freedom to do what they want to do.
You feel comfortable talking about the school situation in Petaluma and testing the high school kids?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, I think that for me, yeah, one of the things that's hard, and this is just, I don't know if there's anything nefarious behind this, but I do think it's odd. And that is, many of you saw recently that Sonoma County Public Health was putting out a free testing for sudden cardiac syndrome, which is the testing, they call it the leading killer of high school students. And amazingly, they're only offering that screening to students who have been vaccinated. And it makes no sense, to be really frank. If this is really the leading cause, and numbers show that it is, I mean, high school deaths and junior high deaths are not high comparatively anyway. But if this is really the leading cause, they've known this since the study that they quote, or that they cited, the reasoning for this is a study that was done between 2009 and 2011. And they've known about this data since, I think, 2013, when this report was done. This is the first year that we're offering free cardiac screenings for this, and the only way to have this kind of cardiac screening is if you are vaccinated. That doesn't smell right. And the reason is, if we're really concerned about kids, then we offer it to all the kids, not just to those who are vaccinated. And so I don't know if there is anything in terms of that there's a nefarious attempt on the public health. What I do know is that if we are concerned truly about this situation, we don't limit it just to those who have been vaccinated. And then secondly...
But what it looks like is, just kind of, we'll talk about the elephant in the room, is that it looks like this heart issue is a serious condition for young people. It's the number one killer of young people. We've been given this vaccine to young people, and if you put two and two together, is this vaccine causing certain side effects to young people?
Correct.
And so let's do research. Let's have young people come in who have been vaccinated to see how their heart is doing.
Correct.
Which is great. Do the study. You know what I mean? But maybe be more open about it, why we're doing the study.
And I think that's the key, is that I think there are questions. There's enough cases of myocarditis in young, specifically in young boys, or younger boys under 18, and that population, that I think it begs the question. And I think it is, you'll kind of get my cards on this maybe, and I'll just put it out there. So, we did this kind of stuff in the 50s and 60s. We took things like thermalhide, which we said was a safe drug for morning sickness, and we had babies that were born without arms and legs, and we put we put the FDA in charge of having not the number of cases, but also the length of time required. The other part is we've put pharmaceutical companies responsible for their own data and research. And maybe I can give maybe a better example of this. And I'm a little leery to do this, but I'll share it anyway. So in my particular case,
can always cut it out if we want.
Yeah, as I've mentioned, I have a pacemaker. The kind of illness that I have was all congenital. So you may look at my weight and think that I have cardiac disease. I don't. I don't have any kind of coronary disease. I'm not a cardiac patient in a traditional way of cardiac patient. Mine is all congenital defect that was greatly complicated by an infection that was transplanted in on the heart valve during the surgery. The pacemaker that I have is a specific kind of pacemaker, and that pacemaker was not the best kind of pacemaker for me. The best kind of pacemaker was made by a different company that is MRI safe. So my pacemaker is not MRI safe, which means I can't have an MRI to evaluate. And in my case, an MRI is super beneficial because fungus is like cancer. It breaks off, it goes throughout your body, and they can never say it's completely gone. Mm-hmm. So an MRI helps them find and locate it. Well, they had 17 days to put in and get a representative there that they have one of 3 vendors, one of 3 makers of these pacemakers. One of the makers, who's in this area, is known for its MRI safe pacemaker. So after having the device implanted and then coming
Medtronics? Okay.
So yeah. So that would you can know that I don't have it. So this is probably a push for Medtronic. Medtronic has a MRI safe pacemaker.
Yeah.
When I went into the OR and came out, and this was something that we were being told, it was really important that they could be able to do MRIs. They went in, they put the device in, I come out, and I don't have an MRI safe pacemaker. When questioning as to why I didn't have the MRI pacemaker and the fact that they had 17 days to put the right pacemaker in, their response was simply, well, we don't make those kinds of adjustments. We have contracts with our representatives on a weekly basis. This week, this is the representative that was in. Medtronic's in a different week. So what we learned real quickly was that often in medicine, there are things that are governed by contracts that are not necessarily
in your
in the best interest of the patient. Mm. And so this isn't because I come with any kind of skeptical view. And again, I say this in saying I have some of the best doctors. I love them. I'm
grateful
it's okay
for
to have
them. Skeptical views.
But I do.
I think you deserve the right to have skeptical views.
But I say to you, but I say that in the same way that I do have real issues with how decisions are made medically. And so I think we have to honestly evaluate that and not assume that that people are always doing what is best for us, and that companies that stand to gain profit are not always thinking of your best interest. They're thinking of their own best interest. Mm-hmm. And so I think that understanding that helps us as we look at some of these issues with like the vaccine and some of these things, that we need to honestly take into account that the FDA puts these things in place because they've seen the effects by advancing these 2 things too quickly. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that anything's bad is going to happen of them, but I do think that from a mandate perspective, we have to really look at this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. That people should have the freedom. Once it's tested, fine. But I think we need to put it under the same test that we've put everything else. And again, my kids are vaccinated, so I'm vaccinated, and I'm talking about all the other vaccines that are there. So I'm not anti-vax, and I'm not actually even against certain mandates as of kids going to school with vaccines that are true vaccines. Mm-hmm. But when there are things that are untested in terms of the same length of time, and when things are not actually true vaccines, meaning that they prevent illness, we need to be careful about saying that a person has to do something in that context. I think people still do need the medical freedom to make those decisions. And it is funny that if it's immorality involved, things like abortion and other things, people have all kinds of medical freedom, and they think not one twice about taking a life. But now, as it relates to something that that seems to be more driven in a context that's more political, I think we have to rethink these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good. I think that's it. I can't do any more. I am tapped out on info
That's
and
good.
talking.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's good, Tim. I really appreciate you coming and sharing perspective, and hopefully this is helpful for the church, and do it again.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. Yeah.
Life's interesting, It's
It
just
is.
okay, we're through this. What's
next? Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
All right. Well, thanks, buddy. Thanks for being a good friend.
Hey, thanks. You as well, man. Thanks.
All right. It's a wrap.